The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Windsor Castle as Sergeant William Matthews adjusted his red uniform for what he knew would be the last time. After 32 years of faithful service to the Crown, today marked his final day as a Royal Guard. The crisp autumn air carried the familiar sounds of the palace awakening, footsteps echoing through stone corridors, the distant chatter of staff preparing for another day of royal duties, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the ancient oak trees that had witnessed centuries of British history. William had seen 3 generations of royals during his service. He remembered the day Prince William brought his newborn son George to the palace for the first time, wrapped in a simple white blanket, sleeping peacefully in his father's arms. That tiny baby had grown into a spirited 10-year-old who brought life and laughter to the often formal atmosphere of royal life. Prince George was different from other royal children William had observed over the years. While he understood the weight of his future responsibilities, the young prince possessed a natural warmth and curiosity that reminded everyone around him that beneath the titles and traditions, he was simply a child. The relationship between William and Prince George had developed naturally over the years. It began with small moments, a shy wave from the prince as he passed by during morning walks with his nanny, curious questions about the guards' uniforms and duties, and eventually longer conversations about history, the military, and life beyond the palace walls. William had become more than just a protector. He had become a trusted friend to the young prince, someone who treated him like a normal child rather than future royalty. As William stood at his post for the final time, his mind wandered to all the special moments he had shared with the royal family. He remembered rainy afternoons when Prince George would sneak away from his tutors to listen to William's stories about his time serving in Afghanistan. The young prince's eyes would widen with fascination as William described different cultures, the importance of service, and the bonds formed between soldiers. These conversations had taught Prince George valuable lessons about courage, loyalty, and the meaning of duty that extended far beyond royal obligations. The palace had been William's second home for over 3 decades. He knew every corridor, every hidden passage, and every family portrait that lined the walls. He had witnessed moments of joy and sorrow, celebrations and quiet reflections. Through it all, he had maintained the stoic professionalism expected of a royal guard while developing deep personal connections with those he served. His colleagues respected him not just for his unwavering dedication, but for his ability to balance strict protocol with genuine human warmth. Prince George had learned about William's retirement several weeks earlier during one of their informal conversations in the palace garden. The news had clearly affected the young prince, though he tried to hide his disappointment behind a brave smile. William had explained that all careers eventually come to an end, and that his retirement would allow him to spend more time with his own grandchildren and perhaps write down some of the historical stories he had collected over the years. The prince had listened thoughtfully, asking questions about what William planned to do and whether they would ever see each other again. The bond between the old soldier and the young prince represented something beautiful about human connection that transcended social boundaries. Despite the vast difference in their backgrounds and future destinies, they had found common ground in their shared love of history, respect for tradition, and understanding of what it meant to serve something greater than oneself. William had often told Prince George that true nobility came not from birth but from character, and that the greatest leaders were those who never forgot their humanity. As the morning progressed, staff members began their familiar routines throughout the palace. William noticed the subtle changes in atmosphere that indicated the royal family was preparing for their daily activities. Soon Prince George would emerge for his morning lessons, followed by various royal engagements that filled his carefully structured schedule. The young prince's days were a careful balance between education, royal duties appropriate for his age, and the precious free time that allowed him to simply be a child. William's replacement, a young sergeant named David Thompson, arrived early to observe the morning procedures one final time. David had been training for this position for months, learning not just the security protocols but the unique rhythms of royal life. William had taken special care to share insights about each family member's preferences, habits, and the small gestures that made their daily lives more comfortable. He explained how Prince George sometimes struggled with the formal aspects of royal life and appreciated when guards acknowledged him with a simple nod or smile. The anticipation, of saying goodbye weighed heavily on William's heart. He had said farewell to many colleagues over the years, but this departure felt different. He was not just leaving a job, he was leaving a family that had become an integral part of his identity. The thought of no longer seeing Prince George's eager face during their morning conversations, or witnessing the young prince's growth into the future king, created a bittersweet mixture of pride and sadness. As 9 o'clock approached, William heard the familiar sound of footsteps approaching from the family wing of the palace. His pulse quickened slightly as he prepared for what might be his final interaction with Prince George. He straightened his shoulders, adjusted his uniform one last time, and took his position with the same pride and professionalism that had defined his entire career. Whatever happened in the next few moments would become a cherished memory that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The castle seemed to hold its breath as the morning light grew stronger, casting everything in a golden glow that made the ancient stones appear almost magical. History was about to witness another small but significant moment in the ongoing story of the British royal family, a moment that would demonstrate the power of human connection and the impact that simple gestures of respect and affection can have across generations. Prince George appeared at the end of the corridor with his usual purposeful stride, his school uniform neat and his sandy hair carefully combed. At 10 years old, he carried himself with a natural confidence that came from his royal upbringing. Yet there was still an unmistakable boyish energy in his movements. As he walked toward the courtyard where William stood guard, the young prince's expression seemed more serious than usual. His bright blue eyes, so similar to his father's, held a thoughtfulness that suggested he had been preparing for this moment. The prince had spent much of the previous evening thinking about William's departure. During dinner with his parents, he had asked numerous questions about retirement, about saying goodbye to people you care about, and about how to show appreciation for someone who had been important in your life. His mother, the Princess of Wales, had gently explained that sometimes the most meaningful gestures came not from grand displays but from simple, heartfelt actions that showed genuine care and respect. As Prince George approached William's position, several palace staff members noticed the interaction about to unfold. The head butler, Mrs. Eleanor Davies, paused in her morning rounds, having heard whispers about the guard's final day. The palace photographer, James Mitchell, who had captured countless royal moments over the years, instinctively reached for his camera but then hesitated, sensing that this moment might be too personal for documentation. Even the gardeners working near the windows slowed their activities, somehow understanding that they were about to witness something special. William saw Prince George approaching and felt his heart skip a beat. Throughout his military career, he had faced dangerous situations with steady nerves, but this simple goodbye felt more emotional than any battlefield farewell. The young prince's presence had brought so much joy to his final years of service, reminding him daily of the hope and potential that the future held. Watching Prince George grow from a curious child into a thoughtful young man had been one of the greatest privileges of his career. Prince George stopped a few feet away from William, maintaining the proper distance that protocol required even in personal moments. The formal training he had received since birth automatically guided his behavior, but his eyes revealed the genuine emotion he felt about this farewell. For a moment, neither of them spoke, and the silence was filled with the weight of shared memories and mutual respect. The morning air seemed to shimmer with anticipation as the two stood facing each other, representing different worlds brought together by circumstance and bound by friendship. The young prince had been coached by his parents about appropriate ways to acknowledge staff members who had served the family with distinction. He understood the delicate balance between showing personal appreciation and maintaining the formal boundaries that royal protocol required. However, as he stood before William, Prince George felt that traditional words of thanks seemed inadequate for someone who had been not just a protector but a mentor and friend. William could see the internal struggle playing out across the prince's face. The boy was clearly searching for the right way to express his feelings within the constraints of his position. As a seasoned observer of human nature, William recognized the prince's dilemma and felt a surge of affection for this young person who cared enough to wrestle with such questions. It was moments like these that confirmed his belief in Prince George's future potential as a compassionate leader. The courtyard around them buzzed with quiet activity as other guards maintained their positions, and staff members continued their duties, But there was an unspoken understanding that this interaction deserved respectful space. The ancient stones of Windsor Castle had witnessed countless farewells over the centuries, but each one carried its own unique emotional weight. This morning's goodbye represented the intersection of duty, tradition, and genuine human connection that defined the best aspects of royal service. Prince George took a small step forward, his decision made. He had considered various options for saying goodbye to William: a formal handshake, a few words of appreciation, or perhaps a small gift. But as he stood there in the morning light, surrounded by the history and tradition of his heritage, the prince realized that the most meaningful gesture would be one that came purely from his heart, unscripted and authentic. The young prince's education had included extensive lessons about royal protocol, appropriate behavior in public and private settings, and the importance of maintaining dignity in all circumstances. However, his parents had also taught him that true leadership required the courage to act with genuine compassion, even when such actions might stretch the boundaries of conventional expectations. As Prince George looked at William's weathered face, marked by years of faithful service and countless early mornings standing guard, he felt a clarity about what he needed to do. William watched as Prince George's expression shifted from uncertainty to determination. The guard had seen this same look on the prince's face during their conversations about difficult historical events or complex moral questions. It was the expression of a young person grappling with important decisions and finding the strength to act according to his conscience, rather than simply following prescribed rules. In that moment, William felt immense pride in the young man Prince George was becoming. The morning sun continued to climb higher, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the courtyard. Other members of the royal guard maintained their positions with professional stoicism, but several couldn't help but glance toward the interaction taking place near the main entrance. They understood the significance of William's departure and recognized that they were witnessing something that went beyond the usual formalities of palace life. Somewhere in the distance, a clock began to chime, marking another quarter hour in what had become an extraordinary morning. The sound seemed to galvanize Prince George, reminding him that these precious moments with William were finite, and that whatever he intended to do should not be postponed. The prince took a deep breath, drawing upon reserves of courage that would serve him well throughout his future role as king, and prepared to make a gesture that would surprise everyone present and create a memory that would last a lifetime. Without warning, Prince George stepped forward and wrapped his arms around William in a genuine, heartfelt embrace. The gesture was completely spontaneous, breaking through years of formal protocol in a single moment of pure human connection. The 10-year-old prince held onto the veteran guard tightly, his small frame pressed against William's ceremonial uniform, conveying more appreciation and affection than any formal speech could have expressed. The hug lasted only a few seconds, but its impact rippled through the courtyard like a stone dropped into still water. William, caught completely off guard by this unexpected display of emotion, felt his composed military bearing crumble for just an instant, his eyes filled with tears as he gently placed one arm around the young prince, returning the embrace with the careful tenderness of someone who understood the precious nature of this moment. For 32 years he had maintained strict professional boundaries, but in this instant those barriers dissolved completely. He was no longer Sergeant Matthews, the Royal Guard. He was simply William, a man saying goodbye to a child he had grown to love like his own grandson. The other guards in the courtyard witnessed this remarkable scene with a mixture of surprise and deep emotional recognition. Several of them had served for many years and had never seen such an open display of affection between a member of the royal family and palace staff. Yet, rather than viewing it as a breach of protocol, they understood it as a beautiful demonstration of the genuine relationships that could develop within the formal structure of royal service. The moment felt both extraordinary and completely natural, as if it had been inevitable that these two individuals would find a way to express their mutual respect and affection. Palace staff members who observed the embrace felt a collective intake of breath, followed by smiles of understanding and appreciation. Mrs. Davies, the head butler, found herself wiping away tears as she watched the young prince express the gratitude that so many staff members had felt over the years, but had never been able to voice so directly. The palace photographer, James Mitchell, quietly raised his camera and captured the moment, knowing instinctively that this image would become one of the most treasured photographs in royal history. As the embrace ended, Prince George stepped back and looked directly into William's eyes with a maturity that belied his young age. The prince's face was flushed with emotion, but his expression was clear and determined. He had crossed an invisible line between formal duty and personal connection, and he showed no regret for his choice. In that moment, observers could see glimpses of the future king he would become, someone capable of balancing tradition with genuine human compassion, protocol with authentic relationship. William straightened his uniform and attempted to regain his professional composure, but the smile on his weathered face betrayed the profound impact of the prince's gesture. He had received many honors during his military career, including medals for bravery and commendations for exceptional service, but nothing had touched him as deeply as this simple embrace from a 10-year-old boy. The hug had validated everything he believed about the importance of treating each person with dignity and respect, regardless of their position in life. The silence that followed the embrace was filled with unspoken understanding. Other palace staff continued with their duties, but there was a new energy in their movements, a sense that they had witnessed something that reminded them all of the human heart beating beneath the formal structure of royal life. The moment had created a ripple effect of emotion that would be felt throughout the palace for days to come, as word spread about the young prince's spontaneous display of gratitude and affection. Prince George's parents, unaware of what had just transpired in the courtyard, were preparing for their morning schedule in another part of the palace. When they learned about their son's gesture later that day, they would feel a deep pride in his emotional intelligence and his instinctive understanding of when formal rules should give way to human compassion. The embrace would confirm their belief that they were raising not just a future monarch, but a young man with the heart and courage necessary to lead with both strength and empathy. The embrace also represented a moment of transition for Prince George himself. Throughout his young life, he had been carefully taught about the responsibilities and restrictions that came with his royal birth. He understood that his actions were always observed and that he was expected to behave according to strict protocols. However, in choosing to hug William, the prince had discovered that true leadership sometimes required the courage to act from the heart, even when such actions might be unexpected or unconventional. For William, the embrace served as a powerful reminder of why he had chosen to dedicate his life to royal service. It was not the pageantry or the honor that had sustained him through 3 decades of duty. It was the opportunity to serve a family and an institution that, at its best, represented the highest ideals of public service and human dignity. Prince George's spontaneous gesture had given him a perfect ending to his career, a moment that encapsulated everything meaningful about his years of faithful service. As the immediate emotion of the moment began to settle, both Prince George and William understood that they had shared something that would stay with them forever. The young prince had learned that genuine expression of gratitude required courage, and that the most important gestures were often the simplest ones. William had been reminded that the true measure of a life well lived was not found in formal recognition but in the connections formed with others and the positive impact made on individual lives. The morning continued around them, but the courtyard seemed transformed by what had taken place. Other guards stood a little taller. Staff members moved with renewed purpose, and the ancient walls of Windsor Castle seemed to pulse with the energy of a moment when tradition and genuine human emotion had perfectly aligned. The embrace had lasted only seconds, but its impact would resonate through the palace community for years to come. The news of Prince George's embrace with Sergeant Matthews spread through Windsor Castle with remarkable speed. Palace staff who had not witnessed the moment firsthand heard about it through whispered conversations in corridors and hushed discussions in staff quarters. Each retelling of the story seemed to add another layer of meaning, as longtime employees reflected on their own experiences with the royal family and the moments when formal boundaries had given way to genuine human connection. Mrs. Eleanor Davies, the head butler, found herself in the unusual position of managing both the practical implications and the emotional aftermath of what had occurred. She had served the royal household for over 20 years and had developed an intuitive understanding of when protocol should be strictly enforced and when flexibility was appropriate. The prince's spontaneous gesture fell into that rare category of actions that, while unexpected, perfectly embodied the values that the royal family sought to represent. In the royal kitchen, Chef Margaret Williams paused in her preparation of the morning's breakfast when she heard about the embrace. She had been working at the palace for 15 years and had watched Prince George grow from a toddler who would occasionally wander into her domain in search of treats into the thoughtful young man he had become. The story of his farewell to William reminded her of countless small moments she had observed over the years when members of the royal family had shown genuine care for the people who served them. The palace's head of security, Commander Richard Harrison, received reports about the incident through official channels, but his response was markedly different from what might have been expected. Rather than expressing concern about protocol breaches, he found himself thinking about his own relationships with the guards under his command and the importance of recognizing their service beyond formal commendations. The embrace had highlighted the human dimension of security work that was often overlooked in official procedures and regulations. Word of the moment also reached the administrative offices where private secretaries and protocol officers managed the complex logistics of royal life. Sarah Thompson, Prince George's private secretary, felt a surge of pride as she learned about the prince's gesture. Her role involved carefully managing his public appearances and ensuring that his actions aligned with royal expectations. But she had always believed that the most important aspect of her job was supporting the development of his character and emotional intelligence. Throughout the morning, various staff members found excuses to walk past the courtyard where the embrace had taken place, as if hoping to absorb some of the emotional energy that still seemed to linger in the air. The ancient stones had witnessed countless moments of royal history, but there was something about this particular incident that felt especially significant. Perhaps it was the spontaneous nature of the gesture, or perhaps it was the reminder that beneath all the formality and tradition, the royal family consisted of real people capable of genuine emotion and connection. The guards who had witnessed the embrace continued their duties with a renewed sense of purpose. Several of them approached William throughout the day to share their own memories of meaningful moments during their service. These conversations revealed the deep bonds that could develop between security personnel and the families they protected. Relationships built on years of shared experiences, mutual respect, and quiet understanding. As afternoon approached, Prince William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, learned about their son's gesture through their private secretary. Their initial reaction was one of complete understanding and pride. They had worked carefully to ensure that their children understood both their privileged position and their responsibility to treat others with kindness and respect. Prince George's embrace with William demonstrated that these lessons had taken root in the most fundamental way. The Prince of Wales recalled his own childhood experiences with palace staff and the profound impact that certain individuals had made on his development. He remembered guards who had taught him about honor and service, staff members who had shown him kindness during difficult periods, and the countless people who had contributed to his education, not through formal instruction but through their example and character. His son's gesture reminded him of the continuing importance of these relationships in shaping future generations of royals. Catherine, drawing on her own background outside the royal family, appreciated the embrace from a slightly different perspective. She understood how meaningful it must have been for William to receive such genuine recognition for his years of service, and she felt proud that her son had instinctively chosen to express his gratitude in such a heartfelt way. The moment represented exactly the kind of emotional intelligence and compassion that she hoped to nurture in all her children. As evening approached, the story of the embrace had reached every corner of the palace community. Kitchen staff discussed it during their breaks, gardeners shared it while tending to the grounds, and administrative personnel reflected on it during their commutes home. Each person who heard the story seemed to find something personally meaningful in it, whether it reminded them of their own experiences with appreciation and recognition or simply reinforced their belief in the importance of treating others with dignity and respect. The embrace had also begun to take on symbolic meaning beyond its immediate emotional impact. For many palace employees, it represented validation of their service and a reminder that their daily contributions to royal life were noticed and valued. For observers of the royal family, it demonstrated the continuing relevance of monarchy when it operated according to its highest ideals of public service and human connection. Prince George himself seemed somewhat surprised by the attention his gesture had generated. When his parents spoke with him about the embrace, he expressed confusion about why such a simple action had created such a strong response. To him, Hugging William had felt like the natural thing to do, the only appropriate way to say goodbye to someone who had been important in his life. This innocent perspective on his own actions only reinforced his parents' pride in the values they had worked to instill in him. As the day drew to a close, Windsor Castle settled into its evening rhythm, but the impact of the morning's embrace continued to resonate. The moment had created a shared experience that had touched nearly everyone in the palace community, and had reminded them all of the power of simple, genuine gestures to bridge differences and express profound truths about human connection and mutual respect. Meanwhile, William Matthews was experiencing his own emotional journey as he processed the events of his final day. After completing his last shift and officially transferring his responsibilities to Sergeant Thompson, he found himself in the guards' quarters, surrounded by colleagues who had become like family over the decades. The barracks, with their simple furnishings and personal photographs, had been his second home for so long that leaving felt like closing a chapter of his life that had defined his identity. His fellow guards had organized a small farewell gathering, complete with stories, laughter, and the kind of camaraderie that develops among people who have shared both routine duties and moments of real tension. However, the conversation kept returning to Prince George's unexpected embrace, and William found himself recounting the moment over and over again, each telling revealing new layers of emotion and significance. His colleagues listened with understanding, many of them sharing their own experiences of unexpected kindness from members of the royal family. Sergeant David Thompson, William's replacement, approached him with a mixture of respect and nervousness. At 28 years old, David had trained extensively for this position, but he understood that no amount of preparation could fully convey the nuances of royal service that William had learned through 3 decades of experience. The veteran guard had spent weeks sharing practical knowledge with his successor, but in the aftermath of the morning's events, their conversation took on a deeper dimension. William found himself explaining to David that effective royal protection required more than vigilance and protocol compliance. It demanded an understanding of each family member's personality, preferences, and needs. He described Prince George's curious nature, his love of history, and his genuine interest in the lives of the people around him. The embrace had demonstrated the prince's emotional maturity and his ability to form meaningful connections despite the formal constraints of his position. As word of the embrace continued to spread beyond the palace walls, it reached members of the extended royal household and longtime family friends. These individuals, who had observed the royal family's interactions with staff over many years, recognized the significance of Prince George's gesture within the broader context of royal tradition and modern expectations. The moment represented a perfect balance between maintaining dignity and expressing genuine human emotion. Lady Margaret Thornfield, a family friend who had known several generations of royals, heard about the embrace during an afternoon phone call with a palace contact. As someone who had witnessed the evolution of royal behavior over decades, she understood that Prince George's spontaneous action represented the kind of authentic leadership that would be essential for the monarchy's future relevance. The embrace demonstrated that the young prince possessed both the emotional intelligence to recognize meaningful relationships and the courage to express his feelings appropriately. The story also reached retired palace staff who had maintained connections with current employees. These former servants, who had dedicated significant portions of their lives to royal service, felt a deep satisfaction in learning about Prince George's gesture. Many of them had their own memories of small kindnesses from royal family members that had meant more to them than any formal recognition. The embrace validated their belief that their service had been valued, and that the relationships they had formed during their careers had genuine meaning. Back in his modest cottage on the palace grounds, William began the process of packing his personal belongings from 3 decades of service. As he carefully wrapped framed photographs and sorted through personal papers, he found himself pausing frequently to reflect on the morning's events. The embrace had given him something he hadn't realized. He needed confirmation that his years of dedication had made a real difference in the life of a young person who would one day lead the nation. The photograph that James Mitchell had captured of the embrace was being carefully reviewed by palace communication staff. While they understood the private nature of the moment, they also recognized its potential significance in demonstrating the human side of royal life. The image showed Prince George's genuine emotion and William's surprised but pleased response, capturing a moment of authentic connection that spoke volumes about the character of both individuals involved. Prince George's siblings, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, learned about their brother's gesture when they returned from their own activities later in the day. Their reactions reflected their own personalities and ages, but both seemed to understand instinctively that their brother had done something important and meaningful. The embrace became part of their family's collective memory, a story that would likely be retold and referenced for years to come. The emotional impact of the morning's events extended to William's own family as well. When he called his wife Margaret to tell her about Prince George's farewell gesture, she could hear the emotion in his voice even over the phone. After 32 years of marriage to a man whose professional life required emotional restraint and formal behavior, she understood immediately how meaningful this spontaneous display of affection had been for her husband. William's adult children, who had grown up hearing stories about palace life and had occasionally met Prince George during family events, felt a surge of pride when they learned about the embrace. They had always admired their father's dedication to royal service, but the prince's gesture provided external validation of what they had always known, that their father was not just a skilled professional, but a person capable of forming meaningful relationships and making a positive impact on others' lives. As evening settled over Windsor Castle, William took one final walk through the areas where he had served for so many years. The corridors, courtyards, and gardens held countless memories of conversations, observations, and quiet moments of reflection. The embrace with Prince George had become the perfect capstone to his career, a moment that encapsulated everything he valued about service, duty, and human connection. Tomorrow he would begin a new chapter of his life, but the memory of that spontaneous hug would remain with him forever, a reminder that the most important aspects of any job are often the relationships formed and the lives touched along the way. 3 months after William's retirement, the story of Prince George's embrace had taken on a life of its own, becoming a symbol of hope and human connection that resonated far beyond the palace walls. The image captured by James Mitchell had been carefully released by the palace communications team, and it quickly became one of the most beloved photographs in recent royal history. News outlets around the world had featured the story, with commentators praising both Prince George's emotional maturity and the genuine relationships that clearly existed between the royal family and their staff. The photograph appeared on the front pages of newspapers across Britain and was shared millions of times on social media platforms. People from all walks of life found something deeply moving about the image of a young prince expressing such heartfelt gratitude to a retiring guard. The moment had transcended its original context to become a reminder of the importance of recognizing and appreciating the service of others, regardless of their position or status in society. In schools across the country, teachers began using the story as an example of emotional intelligence and leadership. Children. Prince George's age were particularly inspired by his willingness to break with protocol to express his genuine feelings. The embrace became a teaching moment about the importance of gratitude, the courage required to act according to one's conscience, and the power of simple gestures to communicate profound respect and affection. William Matthews, now settled into retirement, found himself unexpectedly thrust into the public eye as people sought to learn more about the man who had received such a meaningful farewell from the future king. He handled the attention with the same grace and dignity that had characterized his royal service, but he consistently redirected focus back to Prince George's character and the values that the young prince had demonstrated through his spontaneous gesture. During a carefully arranged interview with a respected royal correspondent, William spoke about his decades of service and the relationships he had formed with multiple generations of the royal family. He described Prince George as an exceptional young person who possessed both the intelligence to understand his future responsibilities and the emotional maturity to treat everyone around him with genuine respect and kindness. The embrace, he explained, had been completely spontaneous and had perfectly captured the prince's authentic personality. The story also inspired other organizations to examine their own cultures of recognition and appreciation. Military units, police departments, and public service organizations began implementing new programs to acknowledge the contributions of longtime employees and to create opportunities for meaningful expressions of gratitude. The embrace had demonstrated that formal ceremonies and official commendations, while important, could not replace the power of genuine, personal acknowledgement. Prince George himself continued his education and royal duties with the same dedication he had always shown. But those close to him noticed a subtle change in his confidence and self-awareness. The positive response to his gesture had reinforced his understanding that authentic leadership required the courage to act according to one's values, even when such actions might be unexpected or unconventional. His parents observed that he seemed more comfortable with the idea of balancing royal protocol with genuine human expression. The embrace had also strengthened the bond between Prince George and the palace, staff in general. Employees who had witnessed the moment or heard about it firsthand felt a renewed sense of purpose in their work, knowing that their service was not only noticed, but genuinely appreciated. The young prince's gesture had created a ripple effect of goodwill that improved morale throughout the royal household and reinforced the family's reputation as considerate employers. Several months after the event, Prince George surprised his parents by asking if he could visit William in his retirement. The request demonstrated the lasting impact that their relationship had made on the young prince, and his desire to maintain meaningful connections beyond the formal boundaries of royal life. After careful consideration and planning, a private visit was arranged that would allow the prince to see how William was adjusting to retirement and to continue their friendship in a new context. The visit took place on a quiet Saturday afternoon at William's cottage, away from media attention and public scrutiny. Prince George, accompanied by his protection officer and a private secretary, spent several hours with William and his wife Margaret. They toured William's garden, looked at photographs from his military and royal service, and engaged in the same kind of thoughtful conversations that had characterized their relationship during William's years at the palace. During the visit, William presented Prince George with a carefully crafted wooden box containing mementos from their shared experiences. The box included photographs from various royal events, a small piece of stone from Windsor Castle's ancient walls, and a handwritten letter expressing William's hopes and wishes for the prince's future. The gift represented not just a memento of their friendship, but a tangible reminder of the values and lessons they had shared over the years. Prince George, in turn, had prepared his own surprise for William. Working with his art tutor, he had created a detailed drawing of Windsor Castle's main courtyard, depicting the exact spot where their memorable embrace had taken place. The drawing was accompanied by a handwritten note thanking William for his years of service and friendship, and expressing the hope that their connection would continue throughout the years ahead. The private visit reinforced for both of them that their relationship had transcended the formal boundaries of royal service to become a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and affection. For Prince George, it provided an opportunity to see William in his home environment and to understand that meaningful relationships could continue and evolve even when circumstances changed. For William, it confirmed that his years of service had created lasting bonds that would enrich his retirement and provide ongoing purpose to his life. As they said goodbye at the end of the visit, both Prince George and William understood that their embrace 3 months earlier had been more than just a moment of farewell. It had been the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship and a powerful demonstration of the human connections that give meaning to service, duty, and leadership. The story of their friendship would continue to inspire others and serve as a reminder that the most important aspects of any role are often the relationships formed and the positive impact made on individual lives. 5 years had passed since that memorable morning when Prince George embraced Sergeant William Matthews, and the impact of that single gesture continued to resonate through both their lives and the broader royal institution. Now 15 years old, Prince George had grown into a confident young man who balanced his royal responsibilities with the authentic compassion that had characterized his childhood. The embrace with William had become a defining moment in his personal development, teaching him that genuine leadership required the courage to express sincere gratitude and maintain meaningful relationships across all social boundaries. William Matthews, now 72 and enjoying a fulfilling retirement, had become something of a local celebrity in his small village outside Windsor. His story of 3 decades of royal service culminating in that extraordinary farewell embrace, had inspired countless conversations about the nature of service, duty, and human connection. He regularly received invitations to speak at schools, community organizations, and veterans groups, where he shared not just stories from his royal service but lessons about the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect. The photograph of the embrace had found its place in royal history, displayed in palace galleries alongside other significant moments from the monarchy's modern era. Visitors to Windsor Castle often paused before the image, drawn to its powerful depiction of authentic human emotion within the formal structure of royal life. Tour guides frequently used the photograph to illustrate how the current generation of royals had maintained the institution's relevance by balancing tradition with genuine personal connection. Prince George's relationship with palace staff had been permanently shaped by his experience with William. As he grew older and took on more official duties, he made a point of learning the names and personal details of everyone who worked at the various royal residences. His genuine interest in their lives and his consistent expressions of appreciation had earned him a reputation as someone who understood that effective leadership required recognizing the contributions of everyone on the team, regardless of their formal position. The embrace had also influenced how Prince George approached his public duties. During official engagements, he was known for taking extra time to speak with security personnel, event staff, and other behind-the-scenes workers who made royal visits possible. His genuine curiosity about their work and his sincere thanks for their service had become a hallmark of his public appearances, earning him respect from both the people he met and the media who covered his activities. William had maintained a correspondence with Prince George throughout the 5 years since his retirement, exchanging letters that covered everything from current events to personal reflections on leadership and service. Their ongoing friendship had provided the prince with a valuable perspective from someone outside the royal bubble, while giving William a continuing sense of purpose and connection to the institution he had served for so long. Their letters had become treasured documents that both men planned to preserve for future generations. The story of their embrace had inspired several charitable initiatives focused on recognizing and supporting long-serving public employees. The Prince George Recognition Fund, established with support from the royal family, provided grants to organizations that created innovative programs for acknowledging the contributions of dedicated staff members. The fund had supported projects ranging from scholarship programs for the children of public servants to memorial gardens honoring retired employees who had made significant contributions to their communities. The 5th anniversary of William's retirement, Prince George requested permission to make a special visit to honor not just William, but all the retired royal staff who had shaped his childhood and education. The event, held at Windsor Castle, brought together dozens of former employees who had served the royal family over the decades. Prince George personally thanked each attendee, sharing specific memories of how their service had influenced his development and expressing his gratitude for their continuing friendship and guidance. During the anniversary celebration, Prince George announced the establishment of a new tradition, an annual recognition ceremony for long-serving royal staff that would ensure their contributions were formally acknowledged and celebrated. The ceremony would combine official honors with the kind of personal appreciation that had characterized his relationship with William, creating opportunities for genuine connection between the royal family and the people who supported their work. William was invited to serve as the first honorary chair of the recognition program, a role that allowed him to help design processes for identifying and celebrating exemplary service, while maintaining the personal touch that had made his own farewell so meaningful. His involvement ensured that the program would emphasize not just length of service, but the quality of relationships formed and the positive impact made on the royal family's ability to serve the public effectively. The lasting impact of the embrace extended beyond the royal household to influence broader conversations about leadership, gratitude, and human connection in organizations around the world. Business schools began using the story as a case study in authentic leadership, demonstrating how a simple gesture of genuine appreciation could create positive change throughout an entire organization and inspire others to act with similar courage and compassion. As Prince George continued his journey toward his eventual role as king, the lessons learned from his relationship with William remained central to his understanding of effective leadership. The embrace had taught him that true authority came not from position or protocol, but from the ability to form genuine connections with others and to express sincere appreciation for their contributions. These lessons would guide him throughout his future reign and help him maintain the monarchy's relevance in an ever-changing world. The story of Prince George's wordless gesture and William's farewell had become more than just a moment in royal history. It had become a symbol of hope, demonstrating that in a world often divided by differences in status, background, and opportunity, simple acts of genuine human connection could bridge any gap and create lasting positive change. The embrace that lasted only seconds had created ripples that would continue to spread for generations, reminding everyone who heard the story that the most powerful gestures are often the simplest ones, and that true leadership begins with recognizing the humanity and worth of every person we encounter.